Hi again, I'm Adam. Welcome back to engVid.com. Today I have a very important lesson, I think, for all of you that will help you very much with your reading, but especially your writing skills. Okay? Today we're going to look at the sentence. What is a sentence? Now, I know that all of you are thinking, well, we know what a sentence is. We've learned this 1,000 times before, right? I know what you've learned and I know what you haven't learned, many of you. Some of you have, of course. The sentence has a very basic structure. There's a very basic component that must be involved or included in a sentence. And a lot of grammar teachers, a lot of English teachers don't teach this. Okay? All of you, I'm sure, have by now heard of SVO. But have you heard of SVsC? Have you heard of SVC? Maybe yes, maybe no, but I'm sure a lot of you are going, what? Never heard of these things before. Well, we're going to talk about this in 1 second. Before we talk about a sentence, we have to talk about a clause. Now, what is a clause? I'm sure you've heard this word before as well, but just in case, a clause is any subject-verb combination. It's a group of words that must include a subject and a verb. Now, also very important to remember, it must be a tense verb, meaning that it must take a time, past, present, future. Okay? No base verb, no infinitive verb. So that is a clause. Now, there are 2 types of clauses, okay? We have independent clauses and we have dependent clauses. These are sometimes called subordinate clauses. Now, every sentence in English, to be a grammatically correct sentence, must have an independent clause. It doesn't need a dependent clause, but it could have one. The independent clause could include a dependent clause as the subject or object. We'll talk about that after. So, an independent clause has a subject and a verb, and it can stand by itself. It can contain a complete idea by itself, okay? So, technically, the shortest sentence you can have in English will be an independent clause with a subject and verb. What is the absolute shortest sentence that you can think of? Think of a sentence, the shortest you can possibly make it. Okay? Here's an example. Go. Is this a complete English sentence? Yes. Why? Because it contains an independent clause. Where? We have the implied subject you and the tense verb go, the imperative tense go. So this is your basic English sentence. Now, we have 3 other types, 3 basic types, and we can, of course, play with these after. Subject, verb, object. Some independent clauses must have an object. We'll talk about that in a second. Excuse me. Subject, verb, subject complement. Some sentences must have a subject complement. Subject, verb, complement. Okay, we're going to talk about each of these in a moment. I have the A here because quite often this complement is actually an adverb phrase or an adverbial. We'll talk about that in a second. So, your basic sentence can be any one of these 3. Now, the reason we're looking at all these structures, is because once you understand what must be contained in a sentence, then you can read any English sentence out there that is grammatically correct and be able to understand the main idea of that sentence, okay? So let's start with SVO. Okay, let's look at our SVO type of independent clause. Subject, verb, object. Now, first, what is an object? Well, we have 2 types of objects to talk about. We have the direct object, we have the indirect object. Now, the thing to understand is that the object always answers a question about the verb. It completes the meaning of the verb by asking the questions, what? Or who? Now, keep in mind that technically, it's whom. But if you say who, I'll let it go this time, okay? Formal academic writing, whom, whom, whom. IELTS, TOEFL, SAT, all that, whom, not who, in the object position. But the direct object answers who, what, or who about the verb. Okay? We'll get back to that. An indirect object answers the question to what or for what or whom. to what, for what, to whom, for whom. Usually about the object, about the direct object. You will never see an indirect object without a direct object in the sentence as well. Now, again, before I get back to the object, let me explain this word, transitive verb. I don't care if you remember this word or not, it's not important, that's just a grammar word. Understand the meaning of this situation. A transitive verb must take an object, a direct object. Okay? Look at this sentence here. I want. Is this a complete sentence? I have a subject and a verb, right? Should be okay. Want is a transitive verb. There's no such thing as wanting without wanting something. Okay? So this is not a complete sentence. This sentence or this clause must take an object. I want candy. Now it's complete because it answers the question what about want. Not all verbs are transitive. Some are intransitive, means they don't take an object. Some are called ambitransitive, means in some situations they take an object. In some situations they don't take an object. But that's for a different lesson altogether. So we have SVO, must have an object to the verb. Now, here, she gave Mary a letter. We have our subject she. We have our verb gave, past tense. Mary, okay, she gave who? No. She gave what? A letter. We have our direct object to Mary. Indirect object. She gave a letter to Mary. She gave Mary a letter. Okay? So we have, she gave what? Again, this is a transitive verb. It must take an object, a direct object. She gave a letter to Mary, our indirect object. This is a complete independent clause, a complete idea, full of meaning, ready to be added onto. Now, what you put before, what you put after, that's all complements, basically. It's not important. You can have a lot more phrases. You can have other clauses. You can have subordinate clauses added to this. This is your main idea of the sentence. That's your independent clause. Let's look at the other type, the subject, verb, subject, complement. Okay, so now we're going to look at the other type of sentence, the other type of independent clause you can have. Subject, verb, subject, complement. Before we look at it, I want you to notice very carefully this E here. Okay? We don't have complement. Complement. This one means to complete something. This one means to say nice things about someone. Oh, I like your shirt. It's very nice. It suits you. That's a compliment. Complement, to complete. So, a subject complement completes the meaning of something. Now, we had the object before. The object answered the question about the verb, right? It completed the meaning of the verb. The subject complement completes the meaning or says something about the subject, not the verb, okay? It also answers the question what about the subject. One way to think about this is think of the verb, the be verb, and it's always going to be a be verb. Think of it as an equal sign. Subject equals the subject complement. So for example, and many students still ask me this, so I'll say it again. I am Canadian. So I equals Canadian. Canadian completes the meaning of I. Same thing, right? This is the completion of me. This sentence looks a little bit more complicated, but it's the exact same thing. The weatherman must be wrong about today's forecast. I still have the be verb. This modal must only tells me something about the degree of the be verb. It doesn't tell me anything about the subject or the complement. So the weatherman, wrong. The weatherman is wrong about today's forecast. This is just an extra piece of information. It is a complement to wrong. Wrong about what? That we're going to talk about different types of complements like this one. Wrong is a complement to weatherman. About today's forecast is a complement to wrong. A sentence can have many complements. Okay? An independent clause can only have one object, one subject, one verb. However, you can have many clauses in a sentence. You can only have one independent clause unless, of course, you have two independent clause joined by a conjunction, and, but, or, etc. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So the weatherman must be wrong about today's forecast. So this is your subject, verb, subject, complement. Now we're going to look at the last one, subject, verb, complement. Okay, let's look at our last one. We have SVA. I put A because quite often when you have to have it, it's an adverbial. But technically, anything that's not an object or a subject complement is just a complement. It is necessary for the completion of the sentence. Now, an adverbial. Why do we call it an adverbial? Because it answers the questions where, when, how, why. We saw that the object answers what or who. Adverbial answers the other questions. About what? About the subject? No. It's about the verb again. Okay? So for example, if I say I went, is this a complete sentence? No. Because go means you had to go somewhere. Technically, in certain contexts, it could be an answer to another question, but as by itself, it's not a complete sentence. I need to add something to it. I went to the store. I went where? To the store. So to the store is a complement, but it's acting as an adverb because it answers one of these questions. Remember, a complement, and I just want to explain it here, completes the meaning of something. It could in this case, it completes the meaning of the verb, but complements can also complete the meanings of something else. We had SVsC, completes the meaning of the subject. We can also have complements that complete the meaning of an object or a preposition or many other things. I'll give you a few examples soon. Bill lives in Hawaii. Bill lives where? In Hawaii. Now, I want you to also look at this sentence. Carl reads. Now, could this clause, I should say, subject verb, could this be a complete sentence? Sure. What does Carl do? What does Carl do in his spare time? He reads. Now, what he reads, maybe not important. I want the action more than the thing he reads. However, I see Carl, he's reading all the time. And I think, what, is he in school? No. Carl reads for pleasure. I need this piece of information to complete the idea, to complete the meaning of this sentence. Carl reads books and Carl reads for pleasure are two completely different sentences. They have completely different meanings. If I want to specify a particular meaning, I want to tell you why he reads, then I have to add this complement. I have to add this adverbial to complete the meaning of this verb. He reads newspapers. He reads comic books. He reads obituaries. Do you know what an obituary is? In the newspaper, sometimes they put little notices of people who died. Some people like to read these things. I don't know why, but some people do. But Carl, he reads for pleasure. He enjoys it. It's fun for him. But this completes the meaning of that. So there you have the three types. Now, the thing to remember is that you can mix all of these. You can have SVAO. Well, no, you can't have SVA. You can have SVOA. You can have SVOC. You can have SVAAC, etc. You can mix them. I'm going to give you a couple of examples here to see what I'm talking about. Okay, let's look at some examples here. Keep in mind, this is very basic stuff. You're going to see very, very complicated sentences in your readings, especially once you get into academic readings. But I went to the store to buy bread for breakfast this morning. Now, this might seem like a bit of a complicated sentence, but it's actually a simple sentence, and it only has SV, lots of C's, okay? I went, subject, verb. Where? To the store. This is an adverbial, where? To buy bread. Why? Why did I go to the store? For breakfast. Bread for what? At the store, I bought bread. I bought bread for breakfast. When? This morning. This goes back to went. Okay? All of these are complements to each other and to the verb went. You can have many complements. You don't want to have too many because then your sentence becomes long and a little bit boring and a little bit in danger of being run on. Okay, but you can add as many as you want. Now, the complements could be anything. Could be infinitive phrase or participle phrase or clause or gerund or noun phrase, anything. Okay, as long as it's grammatically correct. Here's another sentence. Now, this one also looks a little complicated. It's not either. What Sharon forgot to mention was that her husband was the CEO of Microsoft and makes a lot of money, which is why she can afford all of her holidays. Sorry, I forgot the comma there. Okay, now you're thinking, oh wow, I have no idea. First thing, remember what I said, you have to find your independent clause first. Now, keep in mind, a subject can be a subordinate clause as well. What is the subject of this entire sentence? Is it Sharon? No. Is it CEO? Is it her husband? Is it Microsoft? No. What we have here is a noun clause subject. This is your subject. A subject which is an dependent clause, this is called a noun clause. It has its own subject and verb. Remember, a dependent clause also has a subject and verb. Forgot what to mention, it has an object to forgot. Now, here's your verb, was. Okay? Her husband was the CEO of Microsoft and makes a lot of money. Sharon, this is the subject, this is the subject complement because we have a be verb. This is also a noun clause with its own subject and verb. That her husband was the CEO and that he makes a lot of money. Okay? Which is why she can afford all of her holidays. We were wondering, Sharon goes away on holiday all the time, but she doesn't work. How does she do that? She's never told us that she inherited money. Oh, what she forgot to mention last time she explained was that blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is a complement. Now, of course, this doesn't look too easy. Remember, a subject could be anything, an object could be anything, like not anything, but there's all kinds of subjects and objects. We'll discuss that another time. Find your subject, your main subject, find your main verb, find your object, complement, etc. Now, remember I said every sentence must have at least one independent clause. It could have two, it could have three, as long as you have a coordinating conjunction, and, but, or. John loves Kate, John loves who? Kate, and Kate loves John. Subject, verb, object, two independent clauses, one sentence, conjunction, okay? This might seem a little bit difficult, but there's a quiz on engVid.com. Go to it, check it out. And remember, this is all very good for your writing skills and your reading skills. But if you need a little bit more help, check out my website, writetotop.com. A lot more information there to help you out. And come again soon.